My name is Sarah. I am 38 years old, and my entire world collapsed on a random Tuesday afternoon while I was looking for a simple piece of paper. I was sitting on the cold floor of my basement, holding a small metal lockbox that my sister Chloe had asked me to open. I had raised her son Leo for 10 years, 10 long, beautiful years of playing the role of mother while she popped in and out of our lives like a tourist. I thought I knew everything about our family, but as I shuffled through the papers, a stiff document caught my eye. It was Leo's original birth certificate, the one I had never seen because Chloe handled all the paperwork before disappearing. My eyes scanned the lines, moving from Leo's name down to the parents section. Mother, Chloe Jenkins. Father. The name printed next to father made the air leave my lungs. It was a name I knew intimately.
A name that belonged to the man who broke my heart 10 years ago. My hands started shaking violently, and my mind began spinning uncontrollably as I realized the boy I had been raising as my nephew was actually... Before I tell you exactly how this nightmare unfolded and what I did next, I want to ask you a quick question. What state or country are you listening from right now? I always love knowing where my stories are reaching, so please drop a quick comment below and tell me where you are. Thank you for listening. Now, to make you truly understand the absolute betrayal I felt sitting alone in that basement, I need to take you back to the very beginning. 10 years ago, my life was completely different. I was married to a man named Mark, and we were desperately trying to start a family. My biggest dream was to be a mother, but every month ended in heartbreak. Instead of supporting me, Mark grew cold and distant. One evening, he packed a bag and coldly said he was leaving because the pressure of having a baby ruined our marriage. He walked out, leaving me utterly devastated in an empty house. I cried myself to sleep every single night, wondering why my love wasn't enough. Just a few weeks after the divorce was finalized, my younger sister Chloe came to my house in absolute hysterics. Chloe was 25, wild and irresponsible. She sobbed on my couch and dropped a massive bomb on me. She was pregnant. She claimed it was a careless one-night stand with a guy she met at a bar whose name she didn't even know. Despite my own crushing grief over my divorce and infertility, my protective instincts kicked in. I held her and promised we would figure it out together. When Leo was born, I was in the delivery room holding her hand. The exact moment the nurse placed that beautiful baby boy into my arms, I felt a love so profound it physically ached. But Chloe didn't share that feeling. She complained constantly about the crying and the total lack of sleep. Then, one chilly morning, I woke up to find her packing a massive suitcase. She looked me dead in the eyes and said she was suffering from severe postpartum depression, felt nothing for the baby, and needed to go stay with friends in California. She begged me to watch little Leo for just a few short months until she was mentally stable enough to be a mother. I was terrified, but I looked at that helpless infant in his crib and immediately said yes. Those promised few months quickly turned into a full year, and then 5 long years. Chloe never came back to take him. She would call briefly on holidays, send a cheap toy on his birthday, and occasionally pop into town for a random weekend before abruptly vanishing again. I willingly became Leo's mother in every single way that mattered in this world. I was the one who woke up for the exhausting 3 in the morning feedings. I taught him how to take his first steps and how to ride a bicycle without training wheels. I spent countless hours helping him with his math homework and sitting nervously in the emergency room when he broke his arm. I completely sacrificed my own social life, my savings, and my career advancement to make sure he had a stable, loving home. It wasn't easy. I was a single woman raising a growing boy on a modest administrative assistant salary. I clipped coupons, bought his clothes from thrift stores, and worked grueling overtime shifts. But every time Leo hugged me tightly and naturally called me mom, every sacrifice felt completely worth it. He was my entire world and beautifully filled the empty spaces in my broken heart.
My best friend Jessica used to constantly tell me that Chloe was financially and emotionally taking advantage of me, but I fiercely defended my sister. I had absolutely no idea how deeply and maliciously I was being played. That painful realization brings us right back to the dark basement, exactly 10 years later. Chloe had called me the night before, sounding frantic. She said she was applying for a mortgage with her new boyfriend and urgently needed her original Social Security card. She told me exactly where her old lockbox was hidden and gave me the security code. I didn't think anything suspicious of it. I was just trying to do my sister a simple favor. I walked downstairs, punched in the numbers, and the metal lid popped open. Inside were old envelopes, jewelry, and a thick manila folder labeled important. I found her Social Security card, but tucked securely behind it was a thick, official, state-issued birth certificate. I pulled it out of idle curiosity. I had only ever seen the short-form birth certificate we used to enroll Leo in school, which omitted the father's information. But this was the detailed long-form version from the hospital records. My eyes scanned the green patterned paper. Mother, Chloe Jenkins. Father, Mark Thomas Davis. Mark, my ex-husband. The very man who callously left me because he supposedly couldn't handle the intense pressure of trying to have a baby. My brain short-circuited. I read the printed name over and over again, desperately hoping my eyes were playing tricks on me. But his exact date of birth was printed right there next to his name. It was undeniably him. It was my Mark. A violently sickening wave of nausea washed over my entire body. I dropped the heavy piece of paper and collapsed backward against the cold concrete wall of the basement, gasping for air like I was drowning. The mathematical timeline hit my brain like a massive speeding freight train. Mark abruptly left me in late October. Chloe dramatically showed up pregnant in early November. She absolutely didn't have a careless one-night stand with a random stranger. She was actively sleeping with my husband. My own sister was sleeping with him while I was crying myself to sleep over my painful infertility. And Mark absolutely knew the entire time. He intentionally left me to cowardly run away from the massive responsibility of the child he had secretly created with my own sister. They both looked me in the eyes and lied. They callously let me raise the living evidence of their disgusting affair, letting me bear the entire financial and emotional burden while they lived completely free of consequence. I sat frozen in that basement for over an hour, crying until my eyes were swollen shut. Every cherished memory of the last 10 years was violently poisoned. I remembered Mark saying my obsession with babies was the problem. I remembered Chloe's pathetic voice when she handed baby Leo to me. It was never postpartum depression. It was overwhelming guilt and shame. It was a calculated, malicious move to dump her secret mistake on the infertile, desperate older sister. I felt so utterly used and profoundly disrespected that the crushing sadness quickly evaporated, leaving absolutely nothing behind but pure, blinding, destructive rage. I knew I couldn't just call her and scream over the phone. I needed to be incredibly smart and strategic. Leo was 10 years old now. He was my beloved son in every single way, except legally on paper. If I blindly confronted Chloe and she panicked, she technically still held full parental rights. She could easily call the police, rip him away from me out of pure spite, and I would have no legal leg to stand on. The horrifying thought of losing Leo terrified me more than the betrayal itself. I wiped my wet face, put the birth certificate in my pocket, and walked upstairs. I immediately called my best friend Jessica, who works as a senior paralegal, and told her every detail. She was horrified, but immediately shifted into professional battle mode, giving me the number of a ruthless family law attorney. The very next morning, right after dropping an oblivious Leo off at school, I sat nervously in the attorney's office. His name was David, and he listened quietly as I poured out the entire sickening story and slid the original birth certificate across his desk. David told me that because I had been the sole financial provider and primary caregiver for 10 solid years, and because we could easily prove abandonment, I had an incredibly strong case for full legal custody. But we had to strike incredibly fast. We spent the next 3 exhausting days gathering every piece of documented evidence. We compiled medical records, school report cards showing I was the sole emergency contact, bank statements proving I paid for everything, and a detailed timeline proving Chloe's complete absence from his daily life over the last decade. While David aggressively prepared the emergency custody petition, I had to play the absolute hardest psychological game of pretend in my entire life. Chloe casually texted me, asking if I had found the Social Security card yet. I replied with a cheerful emoji, smoothly telling her I mailed it overnight to her new address. My hands were physically shaking with rage as I typed the fake message. I wanted to tell her she was a disgusting monster. But I looked over at Leo, who was sitting happily at the kitchen table doing his homework, completely oblivious to the massive hurricane about to hit our family. I forced myself to smile back at him. I was fighting a brutal war for his ultimate safety, and I simply couldn't let my explosive anger jeopardize that critical mission. I had to remain completely calm and calculating. By Friday morning, David officially filed the massive petition for sole legal and physical custody, citing severe abandonment and fundamentally unfit parenting. But he certainly didn't stop there. Because Mark was legally listed on the official birth certificate, David also filed a heavy motion to establish formal paternity and fiercely demand retroactive child support for the last 10 years. Both of them were going to be served illegally simultaneously. I desperately wanted them to feel the exact same heart-stopping shock and suffocating panic that I felt alone in that basement. I wanted their carefully constructed web of lies to blow up in their faces at the exact same moment. On Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 week after I found the hidden certificate, the legal process servers finally did their jobs perfectly. My cell phone started ringing frantically at 4 in the afternoon. It was Chloe. I answered it slowly, putting it on speakerphone while I sat calmly at my kitchen table. She was screaming so loudly and hysterically that the audio on my phone actually distorted. She aggressively demanded to know what the hell these legal papers were and why I was maliciously trying to steal her son. I let her rant until she completely ran out of breath. Then, in the calmest, coldest, most terrifyingly quiet voice I could muster, I delivered the line I had been practicing. I said, "I am not stealing your son, Chloe. I am legally protecting my nephew from the despicable woman who secretly slept with my husband and cowardly dumped their bastard child on me to raise." The heavy silence on the other end of the line was absolute and deafening. For 10 agonizing seconds, neither of us breathed a word. The aggressively screaming woman instantly vanished, replaced by a stuttering, terrified little girl. She desperately tried to deny it, frantically saying it was a huge administrative mistake on the hospital paperwork. I cut her off immediately and brutally. I told her I knew absolutely everything. The dates matched perfectly, and I wasn't stupid. I told her that if she dared to try and fight me in a public courtroom, I would destroy her. I warned her that I would make sure every single person in our extended family, every mutual friend, and her brand new serious boyfriend knew exactly what kind of deceitful person she truly was. She started loudly crying, pathetically begging me to keep it quiet, making excuses that she was young and heavily manipulated by Mark. I felt absolutely zero sympathy for her fake tears. I firmly told her that she had 2 simple choices: sign over full permanent custody voluntarily right now, or face a brutal, highly public court battle that would financially and socially destroy her reputation forever. Then I simply hung up the phone on her without waiting for an answer. Exactly 30 minutes later, Mark called my number. I hadn't spoken a single word to him in 10 years. Hearing his familiar voice again made my skin physically crawl with utter disgust. He immediately tried to play the innocent victim, cowardly claiming he didn't know for sure if Leo was actually his, that Chloe only told him she was pregnant after he had already left,
and that he stayed away purely because he didn't want to ruin my life further. I laughed bitterly at his pathetic delusion. I asked him exactly how letting me struggle to buy cheap groceries for his secret son while he lived comfortably in a luxury condo was protecting me. He then had the absolute audacity to ask me to drop the retroactive child support claim, whining that paying 10 years of back support would bankrupt him. I coldly told him that he owed his biological son 10 years of food, shelter, and clothing, and that my ruthless lawyer was going to drain every single cent he had been hiding. I hung up on him too, finally feeling the immense power shift completely back to me. The resulting fallout was absolutely nuclear. I didn't keep their dirty secret for a second. I immediately called my parents and told them the entire sickening truth. My mother collapsed on the kitchen floor, weeping in horror, and my father drove straight to my house. My parents completely and permanently disowned Chloe. They told her she was no longer welcome at their house for Thanksgiving, Christmas, or any other family gathering for the rest of her life. Chloe's new boyfriend also found out about the massive lawsuit and the affair. He broke up with her immediately, utterly disgusted by what she had done to her own flesh and blood. She lost her family support system, her relationship, and the remaining shreds of her dignity in a matter of days. Faced with absolute social ruin and a court case she couldn't possibly win, Chloe completely surrendered. 2 weeks later, she signed the official papers relinquishing all her parental rights forever. The judge officially granted me full, permanent legal and physical custody of Leo, ensuring she could never hurt us again. As for Mark, a court-ordered mandatory DNA test quickly proved what the birth certificate already stated. He was undoubtedly the biological father. The family court judge looked at Mark with absolute disgust and ordered him to pay over $80,000 in retroactive child support, plus a substantial monthly amount moving forward. Mark had to quickly sell his expensive sports car and heavily downsize his luxury apartment just to make the massive initial payments. The justice delivered was swift and entirely merciless. But the absolute hardest part of all of this wasn't dealing with the lawyers, the financial victories, or the screaming matches. It was sitting down with Leo. He was 10, old enough to understand that something big was happening, but far too young to carry the heavy weight of such a massive family betrayal. I sat him down gently on his bed, held his small hands tightly, and told him the truth in the most loving, gentle way possible. I told him that Chloe wasn't his mom, and that the man who used to be married to me was actually his biological father. But I also firmly told him that biology and DNA don't make a real family. I explained that love, dedication, and showing up every single day is what truly makes a family. I told him that from the exact moment I held him in the hospital room, he was my cherished son in my heart. And now, finally, the law completely agreed with us. Leo cried softly, confused and overwhelmed by the news, and I held him tightly in my arms for hours. But eventually, he wiped his tears, looked up at me with those big eyes, and said the words that changed everything. "You are the only mom I want anyway." That single, beautiful sentence instantly healed every broken piece of my shattered heart. It has been over a year since the terrifying day I opened that metal lockbox in the basement. Our lives have finally settled into a beautiful, peaceful, and secure routine. With the regular child support money coming in from Mark, I was finally able to breathe financially. I was able to quit my exhausting weekend job, proudly opened a robust college savings fund for Leo, and we even took our very first real vacation to a sunny beach in Florida last summer. We laugh so much more now. The dark, suffocating cloud of Chloe's unpredictable visits and my constant gnawing financial anxiety has completely lifted from our home. I look at Leo, who is growing taller and stronger every single day, playing competitive soccer and excelling in middle school. I feel nothing but immense, overwhelming pride for the boy he is becoming. He is a deeply kind, brilliant, and compassionate kid,
And thankfully, he doesn't have a single ounce of their toxic selfishness in his soul. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I briefly think about Mark and Chloe and the catastrophic mess they made. I heard through the family grapevine that Mark is completely miserable, working grueling overtime hours just to pay off his massive legal debts, completely isolated from his peers. Chloe moved away to another state, living a lonely, bitter life, entirely cut off from everyone who ever truly loved her. They arrogantly thought they could use me as a convenient dumping ground for their worst sins. They honestly thought my painful longing for a child made me weak and blind, but they severely underestimated me. My fierce, unconditional love for Leo gave me a warrior strength I didn't even know I possessed. I took the shattered pieces of the life they ruined and built something incredibly beautiful for myself and my son. Looking back on this entire nightmare, I realized that the absolute worst betrayal of my life actually led directly to my greatest blessing. If they hadn't lied to me, I never would have had the immense privilege of being Leo's real mother. I learned the hard way that family is about who shows up for you every single day and fiercely fights for you when the world falls apart. I protected my son, and I have absolutely no regrets. What about you? If you discovered a betrayal this deep from your own family, would you have taken them to court? Let me know in the comments. Until the next story.